Make it all thin.
When did you first meet Grandma?
1927.
And where did you meet her?
At her house.
And how did you meet her?
Threw my hat, made a bow and said, "Pleased to meet you, Senora."
What was Grandma's surname?
Same as mine.
Was she a cousin?
No, her father was my second cousin. And it doesn't go beyond that, I understand. After that, you're just a dog's body.
And how long did you go out with Grandma before you married her?
Not long enough.
2 years? 3 years? 4 years?
It'll be about 2 years.
And then how long had you been married before you had Mum?
I think about 3 years. When were you born?
34.
2 years.
You were married in 1932.
Yes, April.
Yeah, that's
Not
right.
the 1st, but the 16th.
16th of April, yes.
And what's the difference in age group between you and Frank?
2.5 years.
And what is it between Diane and you?
12.5 years.
What happened in those 12.5 years, Grandpa?
We bought a television set.
Now, I remember as a little grandchild that you were going overseas a lot. Did you go over for work or for bowls or for pleasure?
For pleasure. Some for work, some for pleasure.
How many trips did you do?
About 5, I think.
And how long were you away for each trip?
Depend where I went.
And where did you get all those toys from that were in that spare room? In the toy room?
Mainly Japan.
From Japan. Do you remember the toy that played the drums?
Yes.
You've still got it, have you?
It doesn't work very well now.
Oh, it needs ever-ready batteries.
Rough grandchildren. Not with that.
Did you play bowls when you were overseas?
On one trip, yes.
Which was your favourite country?
My own, England.
Why? Because it was your own, you think?
No, because I think it's still the nicest place.
Now, you were on the
Lusitania.
Lusitania, I was going to say. And when it was bombed, weren't you? When torpedoed? No, you were off. Torpedoed. So what did you do when it was torpedoed?
I got hold of a lifeboat rope where they dropped the life and started to climb down there to get into the sea to swim away. Because I'd written books, as you went down the big ship, it formed a whirlpool and sucked you down.
Oh, yuck.
So down I went, irrespective of the fact I couldn't swim.
Well, is that when you left Auntie and Grandpa up on deck and you went your own way?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they were going up, weren't they? According to Auntie's writing, that they were going up the next deck, and you got a rope and slid down.
We were on the top deck when this all happened.
Oh, right.
She's got a very poor memory.
Well, that's what I said to you, to put it down on paper so we'll know, or on a tape.
Doesn't make much difference to you. Have you got the sound on there?
The Sunday school picnic.
How old were you?
13.
Oh, I say. You gay thing.
How old was Grandpa?
About 13 and a half.
So you're the same age?
Yes. My birthday's in November and his is in April.
And after the Sunday school picnic, when did you see him again?
Oh, I suppose at Sunday school, in church.
And so you saw him at Sunday school, and then when did you start going out? You didn't start going out when you're 13, did you?
Oh, almost. When we went to all the church things together and different little outings we went together.
Mm.
So Grandpa lived down at Hampton before he shifted to Surrey Hills?
Mm.
Did Grandpa live in Hampton before he went to Surrey Hills?
No, he lived at Sandringham,
Oh, right.
And where did you live?
Hampton.
Oh, so you just lived around the corner from each other.
Mm.
So when did you start seriously going out? From then on, sort of.
Oh, I suppose about 16 we start to go seriously out with one another.
So what did you used to do? Where'd you go?
Don't tell.
Oh, to the pictures and to Luna Park and down the beach. I haven't got an exciting life like Grandpa.
Oh, I think it's exciting. How old were you, Grandpa, when you met Grandma?
22.
And how old was Grandma?
I think 16.
And where did you go when you were going out with each other?
To the beaches.
To the is that all?
Yes.
That's all. And how old were you when you got married?
27, I think.
27. So Grandma was...
Say, oh, 4 and 32. 28, isn't it?
When you were married in what, 30 or
32.
32?
Well, that's 28.
And how old was Grandma?
She's 6 years
Nearly 21.
Yeah, oh, she was young, wasn't she?
Yes.
How old were you, Grandma, when you got married?
23.
23.
So the Ellens go together for a long while before
And
they
then,
marry.
and then how old were you when you had Auntie Pat?
Oh, I had your father first.
Oh, that's right.
Don't tell him all these good.
How old were you when you had Dad?
24.
24. And then how old, what's the difference between Auntie Pat and Dad?
12 months.
It was
Ooh,
11 and a half actually.
that's pretty close, Grandma.
Yes, it was. And a great surprise too.
Did they keep you busy when they were little?
They sure did.
Who was the best behaved, Dad or Auntie Pat?
Well, Auntie Pat was the most mischievous. She used to lead your father into mischief.
What sort of mischief?
Yeah, well, we used to tie the front gates so they couldn't get out. So she taught her brothers to climb over the side gate, over the front gate, so they could get out.
Oh, and what did they do when they got out?
Well, nothing very much. They used to just run up and down the street. They used to get growled at when they came back again.
Oh. And who was the naughtiest out of Frank and Mum and Diane? Grandpa?
Oh,
He would know, he was the
I
dad.
think your mother.
Mum. Mum
Yeah.
was naughtier than Frank.
Oh, yes, but by a long way.
Oh. Why?
He was a good boy.
Oh, come
That's a good
on.
job.
Why was Mum naughty?
I'm the terrible one in the family.
Yeah.
Oh. Now, do you remember when Mum met Dad?
No,
You don't? Do you, Grandma?
What, when Mum met Dad?
When, yeah.
Oh, I don't know exactly where they met, but the first thing I knew was one night when they came home from Mount Buller and your mother had driven the van home because your father had broken his leg.
Oh.
And all I knew then was her voice.
Because they used to come home so late.
Oh,
Yes, we were always in bed.
Oh.
But I eventually met her, but I couldn't tell you when.
And when was the first time you met Dad, Grandpa?
I really can't remember.
Did you like him?
No,
Why not?
hey,
Why not?
he was too much of a con merchant.
I can't imagine Dad being a con merchant.
Oh, he's very much like him, you know.
But how did you get to know Grandma? Like, you went to her house, that was the first time you saw her, but how did you get invited to her house?
Because they're distant relations. My father written over, tell him I was out in Australia, and they wrote to
what
me
is it? Stopping for me?
because my father knew there were relatives in Australia. He didn't know their address, but while I'm out here he found it, wrote to them and wrote to me, and they wrote to me and invited me to come down and see him if I was down in Melbourne. So I left the farm after 15 months,
What farm were you on?
a wheat farm
Whereabouts?
in Mallee.
Did you know that?
Yes.
I didn't know that. And what were you doing on the wheat farm?
Driving the horses, cursing and swearing.
Killing snakes.
And was it very different to England?
Very different.
Did you like it?
I enjoyed it.
So then you came down to Melbourne.
Yeah.
When you left England, you were working as a turner and fitter.
Yes.
And then why did you leave England? Because you had a row with a workmate or
Had
something.
a fight at work there, and the boss came out and caught us. We knocked off work. He said you'd better get another job. And it was very difficult to do.
So what made you decide to come to Australia?
Well, I thought I'd come to the farthest place away, evidently I could work my way back to England.
So did you come out as a migrant?
A migrant, promising to do a year's farm work.
And then you decided to come to Melbourne because that's where you knew, Victoria, because that's where you knew relations
No, I
were.
didn't know where they were.
Oh, right. So why come
Decided
to Melbourne?
As further south because that should be nearer to the climate of England.
Oh, right. And then when you got to
Cool.
Melbourne, you had to go somewhere and were allotted places to work, weren't you?
Yeah, you go to the migration department, which was in them days under the old state theatre.
All right. And then they told you that you could go and work on this place in the Mallee.
I
Where was it?
saw all the chaps sitting there, and in come people look around. In came a fellow looked like Tom Mix, big cowboy hat and lovely +4s, and oh so well dressed. He looked around and he pointed to me, so they told me to come up. He said, well, I'd like a job on the farm in the Mallee. He says, it's hard work, but they treat you like one of the family. When they go into the township the weekend to a dance, they'll take you in the car with you.
And so you said yes.
I said, yes, I'll go there. So I got a rail pass up through Walpiup.
Oh, yeah.
Coldest journey I ever had in my life.
The coldest.
It was freezing on that train. Every station stopped. I was out to the refreshment bureau getting a hot cup of tea or coffee.
Strong.
We get to Oyen about 5 o'clock in the morning. Had to hang around for, I think, 2 hours for the train and the sideline to go to Walpiup. Get to Walpiup, no sign of the cocky or the farmer. We had a coffee palace there. I went in there and had a cup of coffee, I think some breakfast sausages, and they asked me around. I said, I'm going to work for a farmer named Bell. They said, good farmer, a good farmer. So he eventually came in about, I think, 10:30 or 11 in the Jinka with the local school teacher, an English lady who was teaching the school there. So in I came and in their horse and buggy, or Jinka, whatever it was, to the farm about, I think, 6 miles out of Walpiup. And there we stood in the yard and there was the house. Alongside was a little bungalow, and the farmer said, that's where you'll be sleeping there. And English people always like to sleep upstairs, you know, in case somebody breaks in.
All right.
They can stand at the head of the narrow staircase with a poker in their hand to double.
Fight them off.
And my heart went out of my boots when I was sleeping outside. And in the hut was it was a mud hut which was built as a dairy, a cool place.
Yes.
Had a galvanised iron roof with a canvas roof above that to keep the sun off. It was quite pleasant. With a fireplace, we used to stack with mallee roots and have roaring fires at night.
So there was somebody else sharing it with you.
An old Scottish fella who was, they'd taken a bit of sympathy. He used to keep the hot water going if they wanted a shower. Get a bucket of water. He used to trap rabbits, feed the cats around, which kept the mice and rats down.
Yeah. And then you worked there for 15 months.
15 months.
And then you were only obliged to be there 12 months, but you stayed till 15.
Yeah.
And then you decided to come to Melbourne.
Yes.
And then...
And then I found out that I was there. I didn't get taken in the car
Church.
to the village every Saturday to the dance. He was engaged to his daughter and fallen in love with her, and that's why he was carted everywhere. He was an ex-army, British Army officer from India,
All right.
coming out to get some experience of learning farming with the idea of buying a farm here.
So was he, this is the Mr. Bell, the chap that you work for?
No, this is the fella that pointed me out in the immigration office,
Oh, right, right,
Tom Mix.
right. So, but you didn't work for him?
He was only an employee there.
Oh, right, so...
Or he was learning about farming and got engaged to the daughter.
Oh, so that's how come he was involved?
Yeah.
So then you came down to Melbourne, and where did you stay when you were in Melbourne? Oh, in
Melbourne Road with Ethel's grandma and auntie.
So you looked
Oh,
Grandma
yeah.
up when you came to Melbourne?
you had a
Yeah.
letter by this time telling you where they lived.
Yeah, I came down to their house and they took me down to see, well, up Melbourne Road to see Uncle George, Jeff's father.
Yeah. They lived in that house at the top
They
of John
lived in-
Street.
No, they're in, what street was it now?
And then you stayed in that street that was opposite the state school where they had the great big mulberry.
Hoskins Street.
Yeah, you
I
boarded
stayed
there.
with Grandma and Auntie Eva for
Oh, right. Mhm.
about 6 months.
So what job did you do?
I got a job in Fitzroy, making dyes, turning and fitting.
At Chalmers.
Yes,
So well, you were with Chalmers for longer than that, weren't you, Dad?
12 years.
12 years. And then that's when you started off on your own.
Yeah,
Yeah. I hadn't realised it was as long as that.
So what did you do when you started off on your own? Did you just start off in the garage? Or
in the garage,
what were you doing?
making dyes for die casting and for, well, first of all when I started, I was making these fender markers for cars. Bit of crazy in those days. Clip onto your want to go a long steel rod and on the top a bright coloured knob.
What were
So-
they?
Well,
So you could see how near your mudguard was to the veranda posts, so you didn't buckle.
Oh.
Oh, it's raining.
Didn't make you very great
It
number.
slows out soon.
Yeah, it's bad luck though. Don't worry about that, they'll be wet.
Oh, that'd be not
You need the clothes baskets in the laundry.
I'll hold
What's
it.
it,
Bernadette, can you get the clothes
Right.
baskets in the laundry?
It's a long tree.
There. No, it really is right.
Fallen up 7 times.
Did you fall off 7
I
times?
did double apprenticeship,
So did I. So you weren't keen to have a horse when you got back to Melbourne?
eh?
You weren't keen to have a horse when you got back?
No.
Hmm. So you started off in the garage doing all the dyes, and then you got that factory. I remember the factory that was in... What was the first factory? Where was that?
Spencer and Little Lonsdale Street.
Little
And
Lonsdale.
for the record, down the respectable end of Little Lonsdale Street,
Was there an irrespectable end?
up the top in the Spring Street, was the home of the prostitutes.
Really?
Training.
I didn't know you had a factory up in Lonsdale. That's actually in Melbourne. I thought
Little ones.
Two in Melbourne.
you had two in Melbourne and then you moved to Footscray, didn't you?
Yes.
Well, I remember Footscray.
From Lonsdale Street went to Spencer Street, 300 Spencer Street. Right.
Did you work?
Little ones. Yes.
They can't. Did Mum work for you?
Yes.
For 10 years.
In Spencer Street.
Spencer Street and Hyde Street.
Auntie Ida used to work for me in
Just
Little
like any
Lonsdale
time.
Street.
Did she?
Didn't know that, eh?
No, I didn't know that. I knew.
How
that
long
was
did Auntie Ida work for you?
I think about 6 or 8 months.
And while all this was happening, Grandpa was working as a printer, wasn't he?
So
Yes.
was Grandma.
Whereabouts?
Warburton Lane, Melbourne.
So he was in Melbourne too.
So was Grandma.
Pepin.
You were in Melbourne too, weren't you? Bookbinder.
I was a bookbinder in another printing firm in. Forgotten the name of the street. I worked for Arbuckle Waddell.
Oh, they're still going, aren't they?
Grandpa worked for Mr. Hume. It was just he owned the place.
And how long did you work as a bookbinder?
10 years.
Was this before or after you had Ken and Pat?
That was before I was married.
Oh. So what day did you just start work? 13?
Yeah, just a little over 13 when I started work.
And then you worked for 10 years as a bookbinder, and then you had Dad and Auntie Pat. And was Grandpa still working at the same place?
Yes, he worked down in Warburton Lane for quite a number of years, and then they moved to South Melbourne.
Where's Warburton Lane?
Well-
Whereabouts?
Right opposite the station. Frank, I can't remember the name of the street.
Opposite Flinders Street Station.
No, opposite South Melbourne Station.
Oh,
in
right,
South
yeah.
Melbourne.
Is it Ferris Street?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
where
could
that's
be,
where
yeah.
he was in the end, wasn't it? But they shifted from one part to another part because they're right opposite the station in Ferris Street, weren't they?
Yeah, they only shifted from Warburton Lane up into Ferris Street. They only had the one move.
Oh, right.
At the night before they were due to move, they had everything packed up and ready to move when the fire broke out in Warburton Lane and destroyed some of the machinery and made a heck of a mess of all the paper and everything with the water. But they still moved the next day into the new factory, and he had to buy quite a number of new machines because the others were damaged.
What made you? How come you got involved with bookbinding?
One of the men at our church was manager at Arbuckle Waddell's, and they were wanting a bookbinder, and he asked Mother would she agree to let me go into the firm and work as a bookbinder for him. So that's how I came to go into how I came to be a bookbinder. But it was quite a big firm, Arbuckle Waddell's. It wasn't a small one.
I think they're still going. I think I've seen that name now. I think it's still in existence. I
Oh,
would
it could
think.
be quite easily.
Yeah.
Great Grandma Allen was still alive when we were born, wasn't she?
Yeah, when you were born.
Yeah,
Oh yes.
because she used to stay in the spare room at the back of the house.
No, that's Grandma Keno.
No, that's my mother.
Oh, right.
That lived in a bungalow at the back of my brother's house.
And then she moved into
And then
Sargate Street.
when Grandpa died, she came and lived with us.
All right. And what did Grandpa do? They moved to South Melbourne. Did he work there until he retired?
Yes. He was manager by the time he retired. Or he ran the whole factory, really. But I forget how many years he worked there altogether. Well into the 40 years.
All right. And who was the tall, skinny guy? Grandpa? Was that was great grandpa? Was that your grandpa or Grandma's grandpa?
That's
Dad.
Dad's father.
So it was your dad he came over from England, did he?
He did.
And he was the really tall one, wasn't he?
Yes.
And was he the one that put all the vegetables in the veggie patch?
He was a good gardener.
Hmm. And what about your mum? Oh, your mum died when she was very young. You were young.
He died when I was about 6 or 7 from pneumonia.
Yeah, I remember reading about it. And what about your dad, Grandma? How old were you when he died?
Oh. I've got no idea, Sandra, how old I was, but I was well and sure he had my family and everything.
Yes, I think.
Right.
Before Grandpa Keno died.
Right. And do you know how your mum and dad met?
Hmm?
Do you
No.
know how your mum and dad met?
No, I've got no idea, Sandra.
They used to live in Selby too, didn't they, for a while?
Hmm?
They used to live in Selby up in the hills for a while, didn't
Oh,
they?
yeah, that was after, Ken and Pat would have been about 7 and 8 then when they went and bought a little house at Selby. But Mum went up there to live, but Dad was still working at the age office and he went and stayed with my sister in Brunswick and used to go to work from there. And then they finally, Mum wasn't very well and they found that Dad couldn't look after her, so they sold the house and my brother built the bungalow in the backyard and we looked after them over there
Where did your brother live?
in Grout Street, Hampton.
Is your brother still alive?
Yes, he's living up in Queensland at present.
How many brothers and sisters have you got?
I had 2 sisters and 2 sisters and 2 brothers.
So there's 5 of you.
5 of us.
How many are still alive?
3.
And where are they? You're here, and one's in Queensland.
Hmm?
Bit louder.
Yeah.
Daisy lives in Bendigo,
Daisy, my
Yes.
sister lives in Bendigo and my brother lives in Queensland.
and Grandma. The other 2 died.
Hmm. And you've got one sister, haven't you, Grandpa?
I have, yes.
And that's Auntie Elsie.
It is.
And do you know where your parents met?
No idea.
No idea.
In England.
In England. And you bought a house in Sassafras, didn't you?
I did.
When?
Oh, about 1940.
1 or 2.
2 or 3 as near as I can remember.
And what were your reasons for buying the house in
In
Sassafras?
case the Japs started to bomb Melbourne, the family could move to a fairly possibly safe place.
How long did you keep the house for?
I think about 5 years.
And what made you decide to sell it?
Too much work trying to keep 2 houses and 2 gardens going.
How long did it take you to get from Williamstown to Sassafras?
Roughly about an hour and a half. It was in the days where we had the gas producer on the back. And
What's a gas producer?
ignorant thing. No petrol wasn't available. So Sunbright Park had known of these, I think. I mean, it was a big drum. We made your own from an old drum, and you burnt charcoal in it. And the gas from the charcoal would drive the car. Much slower than petrol.
We're halfway there.
Did the cars run on petrol, but just during the
Excuse
war?
me, we never went through Box Hill.
I like to make a bet.
Not very often then.
Yeah, well, there's one place we used to go up, I think it was Canterbury Road,
Yes.
and up the top of the hill there was 2 trees that nearly met over the middle.
Box Hill's not on that
Up, just over, round about Middleborough Road, I think it was. I could take you to the spot now.
Could you?
Yeah. And then up the 1 and 20.
Yeah. Remember one day coming down 120.
What's 1 and
It's a
20?
curvaceous road,
Yeah.
and your mum was sicky because I wanted to get on before dark. So downhill the gas producer
Right.
went quite well.
So, did the car run on petrol?
No.
It just ran on
started
gas?
petrol, then changed over to the gas produced by the gas producer.
Oh.
They had these great big on the back of the cars, they were just like, did you have one on yours, Grandma?
We didn't have a
Car.
car in Jane.
No. On the back of the car, there was just these big, well, you're burning the jolly stuff, and it was
Yeah.
producing the gas to run the car instead of petrol producing the gas. The
Did you burn that produced gas?
charcoal, Dad just said.
Was charcoal. When did you get your first car, Grandma?
Oh,
Your first car was that one, I think, when I was going
it was
with Ken.
standard. It was just, more or less just before Pat was married. We didn't have a car at all when we were younger. We used to go everywhere by train, buses.
Ask Grandma about going out on Saturday night with Pat and Ken in the pusher, and etc.
Where did you go?
Oh, we used to visit friends and we'd play Monopoly and things like that. But
Didn't go to the Green Mill.
Hmm?
You didn't go to the Green Mill.
No. And Pat would be lying up one end of the pram and Ken would be sitting down the other end. And we'd put them to bed in the friend's place and put them back in the pram around about 11 o'clock and go home.
And walk a few. And every Sunday they used to go across to Surrey Hills to see Grandma Ellen. Take nearly all day to get there. How many trains was it? 3 trains or something?
Only 2. Hampton to Richmond and then Richmond to Surrey Hills.
And then you'd have to walk
We
those.
had to get in the guard's van with the pram in those days.
Would there be seats in the guards van?
Hmm?
Were there seats in the guards van?
Mm.
They'd have to walk down to Hampton Station and then to the city, change trains, or Richmond and change trains, and then walk from Surrey Hills up to Warrigal Road to Grandma Ellen's, didn't you?
We walked from Surrey Station up to Warrigal. What, to come home? Yes, just pack them in the pram
No,
and
but
go.
how long, what time would you have at Grandma Ellen's before you'd have to turn around and go back home again? You wouldn't have
No,
long,
not very long.
what, an hour or 2 hours or something?
Something like that.
Yeah, all that way.
And was Dad a good swimmer when he was young, or did he develop that as he got older?
Your father?
Hmm.
Oh no, he was a good swimmer right from when he was little.
Who taught him?
Himself. Oh, his father taught him that when he first started to swim, but the father just more or less taught himself.
And then where did he used to swim?
In the water.
Yeah. Well, he used to swim at Williamstown and he used to swim at Hampton and he used to swim at the Olympic pool,
Olympic
I think
pool.
it was, in Melbourne.
And did Pat do any swimming?
Pat's a swimmer, but nothing like what Ken was.
When he got his first job, he paid to have some swimming lessons with the money.
And when Ken started to go down to Point Lonsdale for the surf club, he used to hitchhike down to Point Lonsdale.
And what, he'd stay for the weekend and then hitchhike back again?
Hmm?
Did he stay for the weekend and then hitchhike back again?
Yeah. Used to stay at the club.
And what other sports did Dad do?
Football.
Baseball.
Baseball?
Mm.
Ah.
He was a very good baseball player.
And football for the Hampton Rovers.
And he used to play football for the Hampton Rovers.
But he played more baseball than football.
Mm.
Did he play more baseball than football?
Yes, later on he played more baseball than football.
Did you know he had that motorbike?
No, I never knew he had a motorbike till you told me.
Was he allowed to have one?
Well,
He used to leave it somewhere.
no, I didn't like them, but as you told me, he got one and he used to garage it at his friend's place. So I never ever knew he had a motorbike till after he died. You told me.
And what about Auntie Pat? What did she do? What sports?
Oh, she played mainly tennis.
All right. And Grandpa, what did Frank and Mum and Diane do? What sports?
My grandma didn't do any sports.
What about Mum?
Mum played a little bit of tennis,
With me daddy.
but not much.
Did you
I
play
played
tennis?
independent tennis, Father, if you
Yeah.
don't mind.
You didn't play much before you gave that away. Soon the voice come on the horizon. She was away.
Did she have many boyfriends?
Well,
A
she
few.
never told, never asked her. So I didn't get told any lie.
Did she have any serious boyfriends before she met Dad?
Oh yes, one or two. What did your grandma, one of them?
Which one?
Donnie
The one
Richards.
who used to bash his sister up.
I didn't know about that. That was Don Richards, I would think, was it?
Yeah, somebody.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Your mum found out and talked to you and not going with him.
Oh.
I can't remember that part of it, but I can remember a bit about it.
And did Dad have lots of girlfriends before he met Mum?
Hmm.
Yeah, speaking.
Did Dad have lots of girlfriends before he met Mum?
Oh, yes. Quite a number of them.
Now, is it true that he was engaged to somebody once before
Yes.
Mum? Who?
Oh, gracious.
Joy Griswold.
Hmm?
Joy Griswold, wasn't it?
And he went with her for a while, but
Oh,
that
was he?
wasn't the one he was engaged
Oh.
to. I can't think of her name, but I didn't like her.
Why not?
She was a,
Hussy, was she?
yes, more or less. There was just something about her I didn't like. I was very glad when Ken came home and told me that it had broken off.
And how old was he when he started going out with Mum?
Oh, I don't know. It must have better ask Mum how long she went with him and you'd find out that way.
Started going with him in 1955, and he was born in 31, so that's 23,
Mm.
24.
24. He was 26, I think, when he married.
So you're relieved when Mum came on the scene?
Very relieved.
Oh, that's nice to know, isn't it?
Oh. So how did you feel when he broke off the engagement with this other lady? Pleased?
I was pleased, yeah.
Oh. Was Pat married then, or was Pat married after Dad?
Before.
Yeah, Pat was married before Dad,
Mm.
because she was pregnant with Kerry at Dad's wedding. I think that's right.
Yes, because she'd lost the one beforehand.
Hmm. And you had some problems having Dad, didn't you? Didn't you have a hard pregnancy?
Well, I was told I'd never ever carry him, and not to get anything ready or buy anything because I'd never keep him.
Why?
Oh, I was very badly knocked about internally,
She fell down some
Through
stairs
foot.
or something.
falling down a flight of stairs.
Drunk again.
Yeah.
On lemonade.
You felt when you were pregnant, you fell down a flight of stairs,
No,
or before?
It was when I was at work. I fell down a flight of stairs.
Goody, workers' comp.
They didn't have it in those days, they did they?
So you,
They didn't have
Yes,
workers'
yes.
compensation,
No,
not
didn't have anything
then.
at all those days.
so you'd had Pat, and then you'd had the fall.
No.
No, I had the fall before I was married.
And
Oh.
then Dad, your father was the eldest,
He
And-
was the eldest.
Right.
and there's 12 months and 6 days between them. One's the 10th of September and Pat's the 16th of September.
Oh.
But they righted everything internally when after Ken was born. And they say that's why I had Pat so quickly.
And they also used to believe that while you're feeding, you couldn't become pregnant.
Yeah, while you were
Don't
feeding,
believe
you
in that
couldn't
either,
become
Bernie.
pregnant, but that's a lot of
She's got Pat to prove it.
Same as Mum.
with Mum and Dad. And we went up to Sassafras at one time. And those days when we went up, we used to catch the train to the Ferntree Gully, then go by coach and 4 horses.
Oh.
And while we were up there, there was terrific bushfires and we had to come home. And the coach went down the road with fire both sides of it.
Oh,
Which was
gosh.
rather, we had to run for our lives during the night away from the house because they thought it was going to go up in flames. And
Where
they-
is this? Kurt?
I don't know, it was just somewhere in Sassafras, I couldn't remember,
Oh, yeah.
Frank. But the house didn't go, but it was burnt all around the house. But it was rather, I'll never forget coming down the road with the fire each side of the road.
Oh, the horses would have been scared, wouldn't
Oh
they?
yes, they were very, very scared. I think we got through on the last coach that went through till the fires had finished.
Was that when you had Pat and
No.
Dad, or
No,
that
that's
was before?
before I was married.
Oh,
As a
right.
young person.
Do you remember the bushfires going through at Mum and Dad's place?
Oh yes. remember those very, very well. And how I looked after you afterwards.
Yeah. And taught me how to plait my hair.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you remember the bushfires, Grandpa?
Oh, only one were up at South Arras, which burnt one of the local guest houses out.
And do you remember the ones that burnt down our house?
At Warrandyte.
Oh yes, that was a bad day.
And oh, I'm going to cough.
Adelaide, you had no money, didn't you? And you had that lovely
Yeah.
watch chain.
I had a soldering on the watch, and I was very tempted to break it up and go and see Adelaide.
So you never.
I didn't do it, so I didn't see Adelaide for another, I think, 25 years later.
So
And then, so how did you get the money to start your first factory?
By working and saving it.
In the garage at home.
Yeah.
And where did you live? You didn't live in Melbourne Road then, did you?
No, in John Street.
50 John Street.
And what's one of the best memories you've got of your younger years, Grandpa?
Younger years. Oh, I think cycling around Manchester.
Oh. How long did that take you? Oh, you just when you went to work daily, you mean?
Normally.
No, at weekends with my pal. The furthest we ever got from where we lived was about 25 miles out, 25 miles back.
Oh, that's a long way.
In those days with the rough roads, narrow roads, and heavy bikes, not the like things they wear.
Must have been fit.
And what were some of the best memories of your younger years, Grandma?
Best to remember.
Best memories of your younger years?
They were just all very happy years, Sandra. I can't say much more than that.
Well, that's good.
Had a very happy life when I was at home, and I had a very happy life when I was married.
Oh, that's good. I think we'll end.